It's time for three unfiltered truths about special education in 2023. It's been a long year. There's been a lot of things that have happened in 2023, and there are several things that are going to continue to happen into 2024. Things that we cannot just simply ignore. We have to acknowledge them. We've got to talk about them. So, I'm going to talk to you about the top three that are going to immediately impact us in special education in 2024. So the first one is our teacher shortage crisis, which in special education, this is an all around staff shortage crisis, right? We're having this, it's here, it's not going anywhere. In fact, there are teacher college prep programs shutting down because they don't have enough incoming students to become teachers. It's a hot mess. It's going to keep happening. But here is the problem that we keep on writing IEPs like we used to. We keep on writing IEPs the same way that the IEPs looked back in the late 90s when I became a teacher, and back in the 80s when my brother who has Down syndrome, he was in school. I have copies of his IEP. And this is something that has not changed for decades. IEPs look the same when it comes to, services. Sure, have our goals shifted a little bit, have some things changed just to kind of keep up with the times, some, but not enough. But we keep on writing things as we know it, which kind of makes sense. So my generation, for my age, we are the generation of the admin age, which means that we're the ones that are making a lot of decisions. Now, for those of you that don't know, I'm not in the classroom anymore. In fact, I've been helping parents and teachers build IEPs that work in the real world for 25 years. I've been from the outside working in and, working one-on-one with parents for many, many years, 2 decades. And then, now I'm founder of Master IEP Coach programs, and those have been going strong since 2017. And so I've had the opportunity to look at thousands of IEPs on a regular basis. Like, this is something that's constantly incoming. So I speak from, it's not just you. It's not just you where it's like this IEP looks the same. And if we don't have the staff to support the IEP, then we end up in conflict. We end up with IEPs not being, executed or implemented the way that they should be. But we're not acknowledging that we can't do things the way that we used to do. Now, a lot of people hear this and they're like, wait, so you're saying settle for less? You're saying give less because we have less staff. We need to do less. Absolutely not. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that we need to look at how are we going to do things differently. See, there's more than one way to provide FAPE. So, FAPE, right? Free and appropriate public education to meet a child's unique needs, to prepare a child for further education, employment, and independent living. There's so many ways to do this. So why we have to write an IEP that's setting not just the child up for failure, but setting the staff up for failure because they don't have all the staff that they need to make this happen. Why we're doing that, it just doesn't make sense. So you have to look at different ways. So if a child needs to make progress in reading, and the way that you would normally deliver reading interventions and direct instruction and have the specialized curriculum, the way that you would do that isn't working, how are you going to get those same results without having that staff? There are ways to do this. So if you're like, what are the ways? Well, I'd have to see the IEP to look, and I have to know what resources are available because every school district has different resources available. We're just not used to having to manipulate the resources and use them in a way where we can fully implement an IEP, even if we don't have the staff. But that's because we have to write the IEP in a way where we can fully implement it. Maybe that means that we need more frequent interventions because it's going to be a little bit bigger of a group. That's one that we go through all the time. We say, okay, is this ideal that we have 6 kids versus 3 kids in a group? No, it's not ideal. But is it something that we can do a little bit more often if the group is a little bit bigger, and then we can make sure that we're still, having our due diligence and working towards this goal and we're delivering the specialized instruction? Yeah, that's a possibility. Do we need to look at some outside service providers? School districts can contract with outside service providers to provide services that cannot be provided internally. So there's a lot of different options. So that's number one. Staff shortages. Stop writing IEPs as if, teachers are going to magically appear and, all of a sudden therapists therapists aren't going to, be in the shortage. And, it's just not magically going to go away. So we need to face the facts of this is where we're at. This is what the child needs. And how are we going to get there in a way that might look different than what we would choose if there was full staff? Okay. So that's number one. Number two, technology. Technology. Why is this optional? A lot of times on IEPs, you will see, in fact, I'm just going to call it out, majority of the times on IEPs, you will see a box that says assistive technology and it will not be checked. It'll say child does not need assistive technology. I want you to know that assistive technology is not an iPad with a communication, app on it. Assistive technology is a term that was used in our federal law for special education way before iPads even existed. Assistive technology is anything that has to be modified so it could for a child to access their environment, such as it could be a slant board that they use to write, it could be pencil grips, it could be all these different things. In fact, I challenge you, like if you know of a child who doesn't use some type of assistive technology according to the law's definition of assistive technology, which means not just our high-tech items, okay? Like, tell me, because I haven't met a child yet in 25 years that doesn't use some type of assistive technology, but it's not listed in their IEP. Therefore, that support changes year after year after year. Now, when I say technology, I am talking above and beyond even the assistive technology and saying that, here we are in special education, once again behind. We're once again behind. We have a lot of amazing, great technology that's specific to special education and our disability community. We also have a lot of things that are being used in our general education settings that's not being shared in the special education settings or with our students who spend majority of their time getting specialized instruction, with a special education teacher. There's still a big division. Everybody else gets Chromebooks. It's not happening. Like there's just a lot of technology and a lot of things that's happening out in the school that's not always transferring over to our special education department. I told you this was going to be unfiltered. Like I'm just going to call it out. There's still a division, and technology is one of those areas that I see a big division, and we need to cut that out. We need to look at what's going on in the school as a whole. Now, again, every school different. Every school district has, different resources. So what's happening in one part of the country or one part of a state or even one part of, a community might be different than another. But I'm always looking at what is the opportunity for us to make sure that, the technology across all classrooms for all students is it's being distributed and it's being used. And it's being, it's accessible. So one of my, stories that always comes to mind about this is, I had a student in a third grade. My job, I got called in as a consultant, was to go figure out what was going wrong. And there were a lot of things going wrong throughout the day. And it wasn't any one person's fault. It was just a lot of miscommunication, a lot of things that just wasn't going well. And one of the things that happened when it came to technology is that this child had his own piece of technology that he used for communication and for work. And then when he went into the general education class for social studies, he put that away and he refused to use it. And everybody's like, he is being stubborn. He's not using it. He's refusing to participate. This is not working. Well, it turns out everybody else in the classroom had a Chromebook and they would open up their Chromebook to get to work. He just wanted a Chromebook. That's all. He just wanted a Chromebook. And it's like, well, now we have two devices and then we have to, what? So what? So what? Everyone else has a Chromebook. He wants a Chromebook. Let's do a Chromebook. Like, not a big deal. Can he use it to the highest capacity? Maybe not. So what? Who cares? Like, he has his device and he wants a Chromebook and everybody else is using it. So it just makes sense to do that. So I want to make sure that technology, that's something that where we're seeing a division. I'm going to continue to see that division in 2024. And I'm going to continue to do everything that I can through our Master IP Coach community to close that gap of how technology is being used in, a school setting throughout the entire school. And then what is being shared and used in our special education departments with our special education teachers and the students that they serve. So that's number 2. Number 3, you ready? We've got to let go of what I call old-fashioned advocacy. Old-fashioned. A lot of people say, what's the difference between a master IEP coach and a traditional IEP advocate? There are a ton of differences. Now, there are things that are similar too. But the biggest thing is we in our master IEP coach community, and this is one of the reasons that I built this community, is that we're looking to be idea bringers, solution finders, team builders at the IEP table. That sounds very sunshine and rainbows, right? You're like, but there's tough situations, but. But here's the thing. This old-fashioned, and why I say this is old-fashioned is because I watched it happen in the 70s and 80s when my brother was in school. I watched it happen when I was a teacher. I've been in the field in the advocacy realm for a very, very long time. And I've had the honor of working with both schools and parents, in equal capacity, meaning I've spent just as much time working with parents as I have with schools to get IEPs going in the right direction. And with that, we still have these kind of like just conversations that result in, well, you can just go due process. Well, you can just file a state complaint. Or, I'm going to file due process because, and it's like on a whim, these sentences come out and it just kills any trust that was on the IEP team. Like, cut it out. The chances of that happening are actually pretty slim. Now, I know there's going to be somebody in the comments that's like, no, it happens all the time in my district, and this is what we have to do. And we had to spend $15,000 to go get a lawyer just to file a state complaint and start. I get it. I get that there are situations out there, and that's why the law exists in that way. That's why these systems exist. I understand that. But for majority of us, the whole throw down the piece of paper and say, you can take us to due process, or a parent saying, or, even being advised to say things like, well, then we'll just go due process. That is like, we can't just throw that out there. There's an actual system in place. Like, we don't have to wait for the law to change. There's an actual system in place that is not utilized to its full capacity. And that's where we focus in our Master IEP Coach community. So when I help you become a Master IEP Coach, now you can become a Master IEP Coach to help yourself at the IEP table, or you can say, I want to help myself and I want to help other people. And I want to do what you do, Catherine. Like, that's what people have said to me. That's how come the program developed into this. I want to do what you do. I want to get paid to solve special education struggles. Great. I'll show you that too. So inside of the Master IEP Coach Mentorship, you can get everything you need to take care of yourself at the IEP table and your own IEP team. And you can learn the side where it's like, oh, and how can I help others? And how do I make that happen? So I'll teach you both. But inside of that, one of the big pieces that you're going to learn is how to really use the system the way that it is right now. So you don't need these ugly threats just thrown out there where we end up in this old-fashioned fight of like, well, playing chicken at the IEP table of who's going to do what first to like hurt the other side, to force them to do their things. That's not okay. It's not okay. Let me give you one example. There's a section, and you can go check it. Go check this in your IEP, your child's IEP or your student's IEPs. There's a section in every IEP for parents to put input into the IEP. Many times it's called parent educational concerns. All right. So parent educational concerns. And that is not the section that should be a dumping ground for complaints. It's not a section that should ever say parent has no concerns at this time, because I've never met a parent who has a child in special education who has zero concerns, like zero concerns. No, there's an entire section where a parent, when they know how to write, and I give you all the templates, and teachers, this is for you too, because you want your parents to communicate this. Okay. You want them to communicate clearly of this is, my concern, my vision, my perspective, and things for communication, behavior, emotional, social, emotional, and academics, all these different areas. Here's what I see, or here are my concerns, or this is the data I'm looking for. You want this piece of communication. And when we fill that section of the IEP out appropriately and we use that, we now have developed a whole different kind of system for building the IEP, because we say, oh, I didn't know that this was important to this family, for this child to be prepared for further education, employment, and independent living. It really personalizes the IEP. It brings it together in an entirely different way. It gives us a different conversation instead of, a parent feeling like nobody hears me, nobody does the IEP. I don't even know if this IEP is the right IEP for my child. It starts to take away those conversations. It starts to remove the conflict. It starts to bring the team together. And it also is tremendously helpful to the teacher. Remember, I was a teacher a long time ago, but I was a teacher. Okay. I don't have a crystal ball as a teacher. No teachers have crystal balls. We don't know exactly what's going to happen in the future for the child. But what I do know is that I can communicate as a teacher with the parent and say, like, what's important to you? Like, what keeps you up at night? What are you most worried about for the future? Parent will tell you all day long what they're worried about. And every family is worried about something different. And so to be able to really fill out that section clearly and start to take away using the law as a weapon, instead using the law as a foundation of how we're going to work together and making sure you're using every section of that IEP. Every section, that we have to make sure when we're talking about assistive technology that we're checking the box yes, that we understand what that definition is and we're checking that box yes, and then we're describing what that is so we have consistency in the IEP. That alleviates a ton of conflict. We need to make sure we're using that box, parent educational concerns. We need to make sure we're submitting that paperwork. We need to make sure we're doing those things. We've got to make sure. So that's going to eliminate a lot of this old-fashioned advocacy of us versus them. Instead, use what we've got. It's actually a brilliant law. And people are going to disagree, like, oh, it's terrible. And it doesn't create the special education, results that we need. The law, I'm not saying it's perfect. What I'm saying is there are really awesome pieces inside of that law that are not maximized. And although I'm not a lawyer and I can't teach you the law in that way, I can't give you legal advice. I can tell you where to look. I can tell you how to fill out that box so it gets results. I can tell you how to avoid threats at the IEP table. I can tell you how to, consider different ways to build an IEP during staff shortages. I've been doing that for a long time. Staff shortages are not something new. They're just at a bigger, it's just a bigger issue now because it's everywhere. So I want to encourage you to look at these three things and say, okay, staff shortages, how are we going to address this so we're not just failing the child and failing the staff in trying to implement something that's not going to happen? There's another way to get to the desired end result. How are we going to look at technology, both assistive technology and then technology that's happening in the school, and make sure that it's, this equal distribution and access within the school building? And how are you going to start using every box, every check mark, everything that's available inside of that document to make sure that every child, if you're a teacher, your students are prepared for further education, employment, and independent living. And if you're new around here, you may not have heard me say that, but you will hear it a lot. So further education, employment, and independent living. That is part of the purpose and findings of IDEA law. It's the basis of what we do in Master IEP Coach. We're not looking to make, children who receive special education services, we're not using this IEP to make them like the other kids and to make sure that they're, living up to the school district expectations. No, we're looking at this purpose of an IEP according to the law to prepare a child for further education, employment, independent living by meeting their unique needs. Now, if you're hearing all this and you're like, yes, I want to know how to fill out all the boxes. I want to know how to get around these staff shortages. I want to know how to all the technology tricks to make this happen. You're going to go to masteriepcoach.com and you'll see our next mentorship where, again, you can become a Master IEP Coach for yourself in your own IEP table, or you can become a Master IEP Coach and help others. It's one program and you get to choose how you use it. I hope to see you inside of the next Master IEP Coach mentorship.